What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the supposed second album by Curve. Basically, this project is called Your Ears Will Bleeping Bleed, and it came out in the late winter of 2009. The thing about this particular project is Curve doesn't really have a ton of information about him, so it's kind of so in some cases it's kind of shots in the dark as far as like the details as far as to what goes along with this particular products and stuff. I did review last year in January 2023. I reviewed his Till the Wheels Fall Off album, which I think originally I said that came out in 2009, but I think it actually came out somewhere in 2008. I'm not really sure, but that was probably his first album. There's just not a ton of information to really have that full blown realize as far as that pitch kind of happens. But this seems to be his second album here. Rate Your Music. Rate Your Music particularly says that this came out in November 2009, but there are other places in Google and things like that that particularly say that this album came out in the late Let's say that this album came out in the late winter of 2009, March of 2009 to be exact. So it's just kind of here and there. Information is kind of scant as far as that particular kind of goes. But this is a pretty stellar album here, I'd have to say. There's some folks that kind of feel like Curve is one of the worst kind of crunkcore artists, and just overall, he really gets like some bunk ratings and stuff like that. Folks tend to hate on this particular band and things like crunkcore and things like that. Folks like the Millionaires and Broken Side and some of those type folks, Blood on the Dance Floor, some of those type pitches. But this is a pretty super stellar album. You just have to have a different kind of taste for like that sort of assortment of music. It's just kind of the concept that crunkcore is never going to be full blown lyrical just within that pitch. It's just kind of the concept that if you're looking for house party type crazes and just overall sheer energy and stuff like that, the energy is pretty much off the meter on here. It's just plenty of full blown craziness, just like Till the Wheels Fall Off. There's just a lot of gnarl type stuff on here, some good nightclub bops and stuff like that. It's mainly focused on energy, delivery, and things like that, just within that relative pitch. It's a pretty crunkcore type. This basically combines like the crunk type sound of Lil Jon with like the screamo type vibes of like Attack Attack and some of those type folks. Like can't really think of too many screamo folks right now, but like Under Oath, some of those type folks as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just some good folks just within that relative pitch, but it's a good combination. I definitely have to say. Definitely do appreciate this project. Now I think I might have liked like Till the Wheels Fall Off a little bit more, but this one really turns up the screamo. I think with this album title being Your Ears Will Bleeping Bleed, the whole concept about it is he's trying to be not. I don't look at this project as grading, but it's just kind of the concept. There's a lot of screamo on here, more so than on the previous album. I'd have to suppose it's definitely the energy is really turned up pretty high. And if you're not familiar with screamo type, especially rap rock kind of especially rap oriented type screamo, crunkcore type stuff, it may get grating. It's just kind of concept that it's this kind of an acquired taste. I would have to suppose just within that relative concept as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. But this is some quality stuff here. Definitely one of Curve's best. I would have to say there's plenty of good tunes on here just for house party crazes and stuff like that. It's a pretty residential album, I'd have to say. It does have some nightclub bops. I just don't know how many full blown nightclubs would pick up a song like this. Not really sure what the singles were, if there are any music videos or stuff like that, I'd have to say. But this is basically like a scene classic kind of album. If you do like that MySpace kind of rap type stuff from like the late 2000s, early 2010s, some of those type pitches, this just has this particular stuff in spades. Definitely some MySpace kind of scene type stuff and things like that, just from that relative pitch. So some good stuff. Definitely should take you back to 2009, 2010 as far as that pitch is going to happen with it. But I just would have to say some great stuff here. So basically the kind of thing about it is just the fact that I don't really know if there was a single off this particular project. There are some good bops on here. I'd have to suppose there are some highlighted type ones that are kind of popular on Spotify. There's some popular songs like This Is Halloween and Fuck My Life and the Ass Song, some of those type ones that are pretty popular. But then I'd also say like Crunkus and Crunkatronic are some pretty almost single. Crunkist and Crunkatronic are like some almost kind of single type formats that just have some good overall appeal. So there's just some ones on here. There's some banner type song. There's some banner type songs on here. I do feel like the cover of This Is Halloween is pretty good. Now obviously it's a screamo type pitch. The screamo energy is turned up pretty revved, pretty damn high, I'd have to suppose, but it's just kind of the concept of just paying attention. I'm just kind of paying attention to that there are some nice ones kind of on here. It's just the fact. Now you do get some good beats on here. This is pretty good produced. I feel like some songs like Device and BEA Beautiful and Fuck My Life, the Ass Song, Crunkatronic, some of these type ones, This Dick are some good produced type ones. It just has a lot of good crunk type vibes, but sometimes there are some songs like This Dick and BEA Beautiful and like the Ass Song in some cases that kind of do have some good crunk type beats, but then there's also some turn up type vibes like Crunkus, Crunkatronic, and Device, some of those type ones where the energy is more screamo oriented as far as that pitch can happen. And This Is Halloween, some of those type ones. There's some good pitches kind of get some of this, but there are some highlights on here, just some immediate ones to kind of go for, just especially in like the scene crowd as far as that pitch can happen. This is a real wonderful kind of alternative album, I'd have to say. So there's a ton of good star-studded type ones to kind of have for the immediacy of it. I do feel like Dot Dot Curve has some pretty immediate kind of attention grabbing type songs just within that pitch. Even if you're the only real problem would just be how tuned and toned you are to like crunkcore and just screamo type stuff as far as that pitch can happens. But he's pretty. I mean, he definitely had like the shock value. Definitely had like the shock value and the attention grabbing type stuff. It's just kind of the pitch that is just the lyricism that I think is probably what might deter folks, but that's not that really. You shouldn't be worried about that. If you like folks like the Millionaires, Blood on the Dance Floor, some of those type folks, Broken Side, some of those type pitches, other folks like I want to say like Dropping a Pop Locket, some of those type folks is definitely right up your alley as far as that particular kind of happens. This is some great stuff here. It's just kind of concept. You just have to tune out a bit. You just have to kind of loosen up and just kind of have the context of just appreciating like house party type vibes, stuff like Jim Beam pouring some stuff like that, the twerking and stuff like that. This sort of concepts of just like house party crazes and just overall. This is the sort of stuff when you get really in the trenches with like some scene house parties, that this is the sort of stuff you're gonna hear when it shifts from like going from hearing folks like, T-Pain, and going from hearing folks like T-Pain and Usher and T-Pain and Usher and Snoop Dogg and some of those type folks to hearing more in the trenches type stuff like Blood on the Dance Floor and Dot Dot Curve and some of those type pitches. Just some good stuff here, definitely. So go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and recommend the 8 songs out of 11 I recommend. So this project damn near gets a 10 out of 10. I would say it's pretty close. I know that sounds outlandish. Just it doesn't really bother me if that sounds outlandish, just because most folks probably don't enjoy this particular folk as far as that pitch can have. But this is definitely some quality stuff here. I enjoy this project quite a bit, I'd have to say. So the 8 songs I recommend out of 11 would be Fuck My Life, This Is Halloween, BEA Beautiful, Device, The Ass Song, This Dick, Crunkatronic, and Crunkus. That's kind of the concept here. Basically, the only 3 songs I didn't recommend would just be Super Sex, 317, and Note to You, I'd have to suppose. But just to talk about those, basically, Super Sex was just kind of a poor, awkward type production on there. That one just kind of had like a kind of here and there type, just steadfast kind of roundabout type beat as far as that particular pitch can happen. This was not very compelling type one. I feel like that probably needed some energy like This Dick or This Is Halloween, some of that type pitch, but it's just kind of like a here and there type song that just didn't pull off the vibes that well. 317 was just kind of a posse track. That one kind of had like an electronic type beat. It was just kind of like a MySpace type song as far as that pitch kind of happened. 317 just felt like a MySpace song as far as that pitch kind of happened, but it just was not a very quality type one. It was just kind of one that was just didn't really have much jump off the page type factor as far as that pitch kind of went along with it. And then Note to You was just kind of an awkward type one. And then Note to You was just trying to be like a turn up type song, pretty similar to Ass Song and some of those type ones, and Device and some type pitches, but just didn't pull out the vibes quite as well. That one was just not as compelling to listen of one I would have to suppose. One of the few ones I just didn't connect with in terms of like the crunk type sounds as far as that pitch can happen. When I think of songs like This Dick and This Is Halloween and Crunkatronic and some of those type ones, and the Ass Song and like some of those type pitches, Fuck My Life, I'd have to suppose. Just kind of one that just didn't deliver quite as well. But basically talk about some of these songs in here. This Is Halloween's a really highlighted one. This is like a good crunk core kind of hot. This Is Halloween is like a good crunk core kind of Halloween tune, I'd have to suppose. It's like some screamo manicness, I would definitely have to say. And this just gets gnarled and freak show kind of craze pretty quickly, I'd have to say. So this is a nice one. Real craze type energy, just delivers on all fronts on that particular pitch. I mean, it gets tricky to understand as far as that pitch can happen because the gnarled screaminess this is really turned up on this particular song, but still a good concept. If you do like Halloween type energy, if you do like a Nightmare Before Christmas, just within a gnarled type screamo type sense, this is a good highlighted one to kind of get. Device is a pretty thumping type one. This is like a thumping kind of kickoff shindig vibes of a song. I'd have to say this is like a good alternative hit for nightclubs. This would be a good alternative hit for nightclubs, I would have to say, and this gets it started pretty quickly, I'd have to say. So this is definitely one. This one goes well with Crunkatronic and Crunkus, I'd have to say. Definitely some good type ones. This just has a pounding type one. This really feels like something to kind of just kind of an icebreaker type song and a kickoff type song to kind of get this. This one's a little bit not as beat heavy, not quite as electronic type sound, but I would definitely have to say it's just a good alternative type one to get for a nightclub. This works within that sense. Crunkatronic is a pretty nice one. This is like a good buzz single. I'd have to say an initial kind of dap and kickoff type pitch of a song. I'd have to say the energy is pretty vanilla compared to most of the stuff on here, though. This is another one that's kind of just here and there. I mean, it's not really like a bad song. It's just the energy on this song is particularly vanilla. That's just kind of the concept. Most of the songs in this album, you think of like Device, when you think of This Is Halloween, Fuck My Life, the Ass Song, some of these type ones. This Dick, some of these type ones. The energy is just pretty damn crazy on here, but Crunkatronic's actually one that just feels like it could be a buzz single. Just an initial one to kind of start off with if you're looking for some initial kind of dot dot curve songs to kind of kick off, where you want some screamo energy but not quite as full blown in terms of the gnarl type craziness. This would be a good entry type one. The problem with this particular product is I just don't The problem with this particular project is I'm just not familiar with what the singles could be on this particular album. I question if there was some, whether just within that relative pitch. Dot dot curve is pretty low key, so that's just kind of the concept. But there's some definite good ones on here. For the most part, this is just a basic. This is just something you want in your tape deck, just for like a house party, just within that relative craze. It's the whole. It goes the whole night for the most part. I mean, I would pep I would definitely pepper in some other things just to kind of break up some of the monotony of just like the same theme and pitch as far as that particular kind of goes. But a lot of these are pretty revved up in energy. Just have like the craziness, just have the real craziness factor of just getting really turned. I'd have to say so that's a good concept. So Krunkus is another nice one that's similar to Krunkatronic and Device. It's like a stellar kind of evening getting turned kind of energy. I'd have to say this is like some screamo fun, definitely. And this is just a good rap rock crunk tune for like a house party. I would definitely feel like so. These are just some nice ones, has some similar type pitches. Just the screamo effect is just really high on these particular type songs. This works pretty damn well just within that sense, I'd have to say. There's some real nice ones. The Ass song's a pretty good song on here. This definite highlight, I would have to suppose. It's like a vintage kind of screamo hit. I would definitely feel like this is like a definite MySpace kind of scene fun, I would have to say. This is just a get mad tipsy and kind of pop bottles type. This song is just a get mad tipsy and pop bottles type song. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a pretty rampant hit. So I definitely feel like about this particular one. This is just another gnarl type, crazy type one that just goes off the meter just within that relative pitch. This is just some highlight type ones. Just the festiveness is just really off the scale. I'd have to suppose just some real highlight type ones. This one has a little bit of like the electronica type sound on there, but it's mostly kind of another manic type thumper. It's probably more has more in common with like Crunkatronic and Crunkus, just kind of within the concept. I mean, this is a pretty visceral type song on here. The Ass song, I just would have to say this is a pretty gnarled type one that just shreds. I would have to suppose just more in particular. The thing about the crunk core on this particular album is minus songs like BEA Beautiful, Fuck My Life, and like maybe one other song, a little bit of the Ass song, and This Dick. Most of these songs on here are kind of more rap rock oriented, more so than like crunk. There's more hardcore more so than there is crunk on this particular album. It's just a lot more hardcore of like a project. I mean, I feel like the blend is probably like possibly like 70 the blend is probably like 70% hardcore and 30% crunk, I'd have to say, where compared to like Till the Wheels Fall Off, that one was a little bit more crunk oriented. But it's just kind of the concept is the energy. The main thing you should be focused on with this particular the main thing you should be focused on with this particular product is the energy. Is just the house party vibes are off the scale. This is definitely some crazy type stuff just to get you turned up in a lot of ways. This gets you tipsy, get the bottles popping, get the women dancing, those sorts of pitches. Just the house party, just the manicness, just of having like a pretty damn crazy time, I'd have to say. So that's the nice stuff. This Dick is a more vintage dot dot curve type song, I'd have to say. It's like a good jazzy. This song has some good jazzy manicness, I would have to say in particular. This is a great highlight for a house party carnage of a song, I'd have to say. It definitely has some screamo vibes, and this is turned up pretty well, I'd have to say. And it's just a wicked overall song. The screamo vibes are turned up on this particular song, and it's just pretty wicked, I'd have to say. So this is definitely a highlighted one. This is just a more crunk oriented type one, like I was saying. This has a pretty hypnotic type beat on here. Just works pretty damn well. The energy is pretty focused just within that relative pitch. So this is definitely one to get gnarled to, but it just has more in like a more rap oriented type sense. This is one where the rap side of it kind of shines more a little bit, but I would say it's a pretty highlighted one. I mean, these songs blend well, despite the fact that it's just more screamo this time. Despite the fact that the gnarledness is more hardcore, and just within that sense, I'd say this the energy, just the way it blends, is just pretty excellent. I'd say so. This is the concoction of this is pretty excellent. I suppose that's the concept. BEA Beautiful is like a groovy kind of electronica dance fun of a song. I'd have to say this works well with like residential craziness. I would have to say, and the turn up factor is pretty high on this particular song. So this is a definite highlight of a song. This is just more kind of vintage, kind of dot dot curve, just within that sense, a little bit more crunk oriented, just within that concept, just within that relative pitch. I'd have to suppose pretty good highlighted one just within that shredding kind of sense. This works well with This Dick, works pretty well with Crunkatronic, despite the fact that Crunkatronic is more screamo. I'd say to some of these type pitches, just definitely some of these house party initial highlights I'd have suppose just in particular. And this is also one that works well with Fuck My Life. I'd have suppose this is some good highlight ones just within that sense. So speaking of Fuck My Life, this is like a low key kind of house party rumbler. I'd have to say this has an electro dance shock vibes about it in particular, and this is just a good scene icebreaker. I'd have to say, and this is a pretty kinetic song. So these are just some highlighted type ones. This has the party going all night just within that relative pitch. This has the party going all night just within that relative pitch. It has suppose these are just some lasting type songs, despite the fact that it just is kind of, I mean, sometimes these screamo type vibes are difficult to understand just within that relative pitch, but the energy is just, you should be focused. The energy is just pretty kinetic, and it just gets you riveting when you're amongst like the night and it is 3 a.m. in the morning, some pitches like that, and the energy is just really turnt and the craziness is going. The beer bongs are out. Some of those type pitches. It's just something that it just is an easy kind of festivity. It's just like fuck yeah. It's just kind of more in that particular sense. It's easy to focus on like the craziness of this particular song when you're in the pitch of the night as far as that particular kind of goes. Just kind of if you're listening to this like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning on the way to Target or on the way to work, something like that, it doesn't have quite the same concoction. But I would definitely say 2 a.m., 3 a.m. This works pretty pitch and this overall effectively, I'd have to say. So that's the thing. So that's this album in particular. Me recommending basically 8 songs out of 11 on this particular album. I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 9.25 out of 10. That's pretty damn good. I think I want to say I gave Till the Wheels Fall Off from 2008 like a 10 out of 10. That's definitely pretty highlighted in classic album. This is pretty damn close. The 9.25 is nothing to shake a stick at. I'd have to say there's definitely some quality stuff on here. Just missed the bar by like a few kind of haphazard type songs just within that pitch. I'd have to say it's a pretty dope concept. The social score is probably going to get a 10 out of 10. I would say the social score will get a 10 out of 10 just because of the pitch of the connectiveness, just because of the pitch of the effectiveness of the execution of these particular songs. Just works pretty damn heavily. I'd have to say there's plenty of good house party type songs. Should last all night. Just pitches like that. You mix it in with just a bunch of other crunkcore songs and stuff like that, you got a pretty crazy time, especially in the scene assortment, the MySpace folks that remember that stuff from 15, 16 years ago as far as that pitch can happen. It's just some great stuff to kind of get here. Definitely takes you back to those particular days to some good crunk core type songs that works pretty heavily. I'd say so. It's a dope concept. I would not listen to the critics. It's just kind of an acquired taste. It's just kind of the concept about it. If you're pretty lyrics prone and stuff like that, and you just need that sort of stuff, you need something that you can understand a little bit more. The screamo type vibes are kind of manic and just overall crazed and deranged. But it's just kind of the concept that if you can put up with that and you do like the concept of like that kind of 2 a.m. house party type pitch of just some manic type nights and beer bongs and stuff like that, just those relative crazy type pitches, this should work quite well, I'd have to say. This really has that shredding type pitch. This is kind of the concept. But in terms of the future, I'm not really sure what Curve's been up to. It's kind of difficult to kind of find just about his assortment just because there's not a ton of information about him. I'll have to check some websites and stuff like that to see how many recent albums he's put out. I'm gonna have to eventually get to dropping a Pop Locket and some of those type folks. I'll definitely review more Curve down the road, I'd have to say, but this is a pretty damn near classic album, I'd have to say in particular. And it's definitely one I recommend, despite the fact that he's kind of overly hated on, but it's not. Despite the fact that he's overly hated on, but it's not warranted, I would have to say.